Hi, I'm Forrest with Bouzy Consulting, coming at you from Tulips Champagne Bar at the Westfield Wine Vault in Westfield, Indiana, with another champagne short. And today we're talking about the champagne method, or the traditional method of sparkling wine. Now, any winemaker will tell you that it really starts in the vineyard, but we're going to go past the vineyard management part of winemaking and start at the harvest. So in Champagne, when they harvest, they keep the different grape varieties from different plots separate. So they harvest them separately, they bring them to the winery separately, they press them to extract the juice separately, and they do a first fermentation. So they actually are creating still wine first. But again, separately for different grape varieties from different locations, different sites or plots or villages. So really, to make a champagne, you first start with making many individual still wines. Then comes the blend. So in Champagne, they're really famous for blending, and we have another video on the 3 elements of the blend, but essentially you can blend different grape varieties from different villages and across different vintages. So it's not just the current harvest and the current wines you just made that you're blending. You might actually have wines that you've kept in reserve that you can also blend that will add additional complexity and depth to your wine. But ultimately, the chef de cave, the cellar master, will create their blend, and then they will bottle it. So you'll have a still wine that's actually typically blended from many other still wines, like a big spice rack of different wine ingredients that you can combine. And they'll put it in the bottle that ultimately you'll purchase. And again, it's still wine. They're going to add a little bit of yeast and sugar and seal up the bottle. And when they do that, what's going to happen is a second fermentation is going to start. So they'll put these bottles back on their side with yeast and sugar back in the cellar, and that second fermentation will start. But because it's sealed, the CO2 that's produced in that second fermentation gets trapped in the bottle, and that's what makes it sparkling. It'll sit there for a minimum of 12 months. So in Champagne, all champagne has to sit with the yeasts or sit on its lees for a minimum of 12 months. However, in Champagne, most everyone exceeds that minimum. Often you'll see producers go from 18 months, even up to 10 years sitting on its lees before you essentially need to get the yeast out. So you don't want to sell it like that because the yeast will be in there, it'll be cloudy, it'll have a kind of a grainy texture. So it'll usually be collected here in the neck. So normally what you'll do is a process of riddling, where essentially over time you turn the bottle side to side to kind of loosen that lees, to get it to slide down to the neck, and ultimately it will be serpoint or directly up and down, and all that lees will be collected there just under the cap. Now, to remove it, what you typically do is plunge this into a brine, so a really cold solution, and it will actually create an ice plug here. And then once you pop it, again, it's carbonated at this point, you pop it, it'll shoot out, so maybe not the safest process. And then what you're left with is a clear wine. So that yeast has been removed, the wine is no longer cloudy, and you have a bottle that's missing a little bit, right, because you got rid of the ice plug. So the next thing is topping off. And topping off, you can use the same wine, but actually this is kind of like the last influence the winemaker has on the wine. They actually can top it off with many different things. They can add different wines or different amount of sugar. So they're really kind of trying to get the final touch, the final balance. If there's a lot of acidity, they maybe want to soften the acidity with a bit more sugar. Or if it's really bright, but they want more complexity, they'll maybe pull some older reserve wines. Or if it doesn't have enough acidity, maybe they'll add some really young Chardonnay. Again, the combinations are pretty much endless on what they can do at that topping off stage. And it's actually probably most winemakers' best kept secret of what they're actually putting in there at the end to kind of finish the seasoning of their wine. But from that stage, you'll top off, you'll reseal the bottle, and then you'll put it back in the cellar to rest so that that new wine that you just introduced with the wine that had been aging can just mingle and get comfortable with each other. And then they'll release it for sale. So the Champagne method, ultimately the simple answer would have been it has 2 distinct fermentations, the second one in the bottle, but really it's a whole process. And yeah, there's a lot of complexity in there. If you want to come check out Champagne, check us out at Tulips Champagne Bar, where every day deserves champagne.